Ray Arons has this website. I'm Marilyn Arons, his wife, and he has asked me to read to you a blog that is on my website, which is MarilynSueArons.com. It's a special education website, and my blog for this week is called Sarah Palin Scares Me, and she certainly does. All of us have been looking for an advocate in the White House for 30 years. For 3 decades, I've said that there is bipartisan neglect of special education because it is a field that is controlled by lobbyists and by lawyers. I've had my encounters with Joe Biden, which I'm going to be discussing on my website next week. I've had cases that I've done in special education from Alaska. It seems undisputed that Democrats are owned by the lawyer lobby and that Republicans are owned by big business. So when I saw McCain's pick for VP, I was very interested, especially when she announced that her 5th child had Down syndrome and that she would be an advocate for the disabled in the White House. I listened to her speech as though it was her opening statement in a due process hearing. Her delivery was terrific. But I've been through enough hearings to know that charm does not replace substance. Given what the Republicans have done with special education over the last 8 years of the Bush administration, I needed to hear more than Sarah Palin gave. You see, the Palin speech was very personal for me. In 1968, I had my first child. The noise, by the way, that you hear in the background are bunnies. So this is very much a child-centered video because all we do here is to take care of and to work with little children. As I've said, my first child was born in 1968 and was disabled. At the moment of her birth, everybody in the delivery room knew that something was wrong. After 5 days of many tests there, I took her home. I had to work 4 jobs to support my family. I had no extended family, and whatever was to be done, I had to do. I lived in a tiny studio apartment in New York City with my first husband. That was before Ray. When I took Melody out in her carriage for a walk each day, most of the mothers in the neighborhood walked away from me. They thought that because of her unusual look, what she had was catching. There was no money to pay a babysitter, and often there was no money for food. At times I thought I would die because there was no light, not even a glimmer, at the end of what seemed to be an endless tunnel. Looking back, there is no question that those years of struggle and genuine pain forged everything that came later for me. Advocacy is about more than having a disabled child. It is what you do with your life and the decisions that you make after you give birth to that child. Ray and I have just come back from Burbank, California, where our son was on America's Got Talent. The diversity of our country must be seen and experienced in order to actually get it. The primary language I heard was one from the Philippines. Skin color went from ebony to golden brown to olive. Ethnicities shown in eating customs and live theater and religion were more than I could count. Languages from Europe, Africa, and South America overshadowed English. The few whites I saw were tourists at Universal Studio Park. While we waited at the airport to come back home, a man and his wife who sat across from us were reading a book called Faith and Physics. He was underlining and using a yellow highlighter. "Tell me about your book," I said. He replied, "It's really interesting. Physics proves that there are no answers, so we have to rely on faith. He was a minister preparing his Sunday sermon. Since I'm in New York City several times a week, none of this was new to me. What was different was that the tiny Bob Hope Airport and the empty streets that Ray and I walked in Burbank and Universal City provided enough space between people and things to see them better. To govern means that government imposes laws, not beliefs. To advocate means that the advocate establishes the facts first and then reaches a conclusion. I did not hear that from Sarah Palin, nor did I hear any tolerance of differences. The essence of advocacy is handling differences in people, their beliefs, and their lifestyles. The inclusion movement was well intended with parents who passionately believe in the right of their child to be included in every general classroom in America. They believe it is a right guaranteed by the United States Constitution. But the law does not always agree because these are individually determined decisions. And it is not the belief that counts. It is the law that counts. And it is not the advocate that counts. Sarah Palin scares me because she is the embodiment of this inclusion movement. That says that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. It says that every disabled child belongs in general education so that society recognizes their right to exist. It turns parent against parent because of political and religious beliefs and the individually different needs of their children. It is not enough to say one is an advocate for the disabled. It is not enough to have a beautiful family, a handsome husband, such as I have, to live in an idyllic setting, and to have a Down syndrome baby. What if a single 14-year-old girl who was homeless had that baby? What if a lesbian couple had that baby? What if an atheist mom had that baby? The Palin experience does not translate into the spectrum of parents, this enormously diverse group of parents who have disabled children. And none of this examines her actual record as governor of Alaska and her policies and budget for Alaska's handicapped children in special education. What I continue to hope for is that one of these presidential candidates will finally recognize that special education is an issue in this election that remains unfulfilled after 30 years. That means acknowledging the failure and the waste of countless billions of dollars to states and school districts. This is not the failure of teachers or administrators. It is broad-based governmental failure and corruption that refuses to enforce the laws of special education. If there is no punishment, there will be crime. And there is no punishment for the failure to enforce special education in America. Sarah does not understand that this is a genuine issue and that next time we're going to talk about these issues concerning Joe Biden. But as you consider the range of needs in our country in this upcoming election, and about Sarah, Palin, and Joe, and Barack and John, think about the Supreme Court judges each party will appoint. Beyond any single issue, I think that is the most compelling issue. Has Sarah ever been in the United States Supreme Court? I have. And watched the difference between Republican appointments and those made by Democrats. Each of us is electing that court in this election. What is the difference between a pit bull and a hockey mom? It's not lipstick. It's the size of the brain and what each decides to do with it.